Let's go from here. So good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to the Tech Talk of September after summer break. Now we are starting a new episode, a new season, I would like to say. So we have a lot of things that we would like to show you. And so we have Christoph and myself from the services organization in zyxel. And we are happy to welcome you to this Tech Talk today.
Yeah. First episode of the new season, next generation firewalls. We will have a look at our security devices and try to talk about every possible scenario setting. Today we are starting with objects. It will be on-premise focus since objects is nothing that is available in Nebula. In the upcoming episodes, we will talk again about the difference between the on-premise and the Nebula configuration, same like we already did in our past tech talks.
Correct. So before we start, let's go through the agenda and have a look there.
Okay, I need to go into the screen sharing. 1 second. There
Here
we
you
go.
go. Perfect.
There we go.
Thank you very much. So we, as you said already, objects is what we will do today. We look into the definition. We look into what objects there are, how many objects I can configure, how can I group them, everything related to objects. So that would be.
Yep. It will be practical training today.
Yes.
So we will, of course, go to the device GUI again and show it on hand.
I think that's what our customers like a lot when we go really onto the devices. And talking about the devices, they're all here again, our lab for the Tech Talk. So there we will have the access to, but you also can have access to it. So we have our virtual lab that you can find on the support portal. If you click there VLab, then you will find information how to connect to also our devices.
Yep.
It makes sense to look at the devices. How do we configure certain things?
Right. We have relaunched it this summer.
Yeah.
We have some up-to-date configurations like remote AP configuration, which we have also shown in our last tech talks. And we have, let's say, shrinked it to the basics. So you can see configuration about VLAN, about AP configuration, how it's done in Nebula. It's pretty nice.
Good. So before we start, I would like to just re-mention that we have our Campus Academy on the next slide, and that you can do certain certification programs. You can follow certain certification programs there. You can do free training, paid training. You can also find all tech talks there, all the recordings, the material. You can also subscribe already to upcoming tech talks, which are listed there.
We will always try to announce the next 3 episodes of our tech talks there. And during today's afternoon, you will also find the recording of today's tech talk.
Correct. And if you don't know where to find all that, on the next slide, we have our SSO login to all the portals we are offering. We have the partner portal, we have the support portal and the Campus Academy. So just try it out. You need one account and then you have access to all of this.
Yep, right.
Perfect. And since we talked about the upcoming episode, just to give you a glance of what's coming. So today, September, we're talking about objects. Then in November, we talk about the firewall itself, how to do the startup configuration. Then in December, we do routing and packet flow. In January, we don't have the picture yet, port forwarding and NAT roles.
Yeah. We will also maybe focus and during next year, focus on the security features again, like the UTM services, go into detail into some things. There are some new things that were integrated into our devices, and the season consists of, I think, 5 to 8 episodes at least.
This is correct. So, and since we are focusing on on-premise more today, we thought let's jump into the October event and let's do a Nebula special event there. You could say Nebula focus on phase 15 new features, but also we are looking into, okay, how are objects implementations done in Nebula? What can I do there to automate it a bit more?
Exactly. So we don't have object-based configurations in Nebula, but we have other implementations and tools that can help us to simplify our configuration. We have things like templates and things that I will show today. We will also show in October how this can be achieved in Nebula.
Correct. So that is our monthly lineup and follow-up, what's going to happen. And now we decided also to do a Tech Talk special in October. So in October, you will have 2 Tech Talks. One mid of October, one end of October, and this mid of October, we will concentrate on zyxel Green Network. Everybody's talking about energy prices, how to get energy consumption down. And this is a tech talk only talking about how could we reduce the energy consumption of our devices.
But we will talk about network requirements and also network sustainability. Like one example is planning the network based on your requirements. Do I really need 10 APs for my 200 square meter office, or are maybe 2 or 3 enough? How to apply schedules for power saving at night, like shut down PoE ports and so on.
How to define which access point to be used and the like. Yeah, so all that we will discuss during the Tech Talk special in October.
Yep. We hope to open the registration during the day, latest tomorrow, and
Yes.
then you can already register yourself to it, and you will find the registration possibilities on our support portal in the top banner and also on our academy.
And you will also get an email notification about that. So that would be super exciting. I'm really looking forward to that already. But today we talk about objects. So let's jump into objects.
Maybe first answer the question.
Yeah.
Will this webinar be sent via email after presentation? You can access the recording and the material in our academy. There's a TECHtalk section, and
we don't send out the episode as such, but we do send out a link to the Campus Academy, and there you can find the recording and the material, not to forget.
So let's start.
Yes, let's look into the objects definition. What is it?
Let's start from the basics. So definition. So objects are the core of every on-premise firewall and are used through the complete setup. So everything that you configure on our firewalls, is it a root or a NAT rule or a security policy, you need objects for it.
And we do define objects to be a bit more efficient in our daily work in configuring the firewall.
Objects can be reused at many places in our devices, and it really simplifies the way you configure our device, because you don't need to, for example, define an IP address twice if you want to use the IP address for a security policy and a NAT rule, for example.
This sounds already a bit complicated in the sense of, okay, do I know which object is used where? How can I find things that if I want to delete something?
That's a good point. We will go into detail on that later. And the name for that is references. Objects are referenced, so you configure them once, and in the further setups, it's just a reference to the object.
Perfect. Good.
So object definition. So object in our devices, they store information. And this information can be anything like addresses, ports, credentials, for example, for ISP accounts, if you have a PPPoE connection. Certificates are arranged in objects, and also other configuration like AAA servers or your access point configurations also arranged in objects.
So I'm defining an object, I'm storing this kind of information, and then I don't need to repeat it anymore.
Yeah, you do it once, and then you just apply or assign the object to a rule, for example, and yeah, we will show this in the demo.
How many objects can I have in a device?
That's a good question. It really depends on the device. So, for example, our demo on the ATP 200 today, you can store a maximum of 500 address objects. If you go to a higher device, you can store up to 2,000 address objects. I think the number is high enough. I'm not aware of any customer that reached the limit. So
okay,
yeah, there are a lot of things, but I will also share some details about that later when it also comes to object arranging in groups and so on.
Good.
Let's quickly have a look at this picture on the right side. So just to show the process of how objects are arranged and how they work, and that objects could also contain other objects. So for example, on the left side, we have the zone that can contain the WAN and the LAN interface, or we have an address group object. So we have multiple IP addresses arranged in a group, and this group could also contain another address group. So we can cascade them. So
you can group multiple objects into one object group.
Yep.
Is there a limit? How many objects can I put into one group?
I can store 128 address objects in one address group. And I can also store them, these groups, again into other groups.
Okay, good.
I will also show a good example where this makes sense later. For example, if you have GeoIP feature and you store your GeoIP region, GeoIP countries into regions, and you put these regions again to a bigger group that you then apply to a security policy.
That's the GeoIP object type. Good.
So then we have the service groups on the right side. I will, of course, explain all the object types later in the presentation and on the demo. The service group that contains mainly ports and service ports can be also arranged into groups, and a service group can also contain another service group object.
Good. Now we have talked about so many objects and types and what information can be stored. So what objects do we have available?
Yep. So this here is the full list of available objects in our devices. And I will just quickly run through the list. In the later presentation, I will, of course, show every object type,
how to configure it,
and will explain a little bit about it.
Okay.
So we have the device insight feature, which is quite new. I think we also had a tech talk about that specific feature in an earlier time. So have a look in our academy for the recording there. We have the zone objects where interfaces are arranged in. We have user and group objects that we use for VPN or Wi-Fi access, for example, or also device access. We have the monitor profile and the ZyMesh profile, which is used for access point configuration. Most important objects will probably be the address and UIP feature. Mainly the address object, because this is the one that you really need to or should configure in advance when you start your configuration, and that is used everywhere in your device.
Yes, true.
So this will be, I think, the main object that you will use in your configuration.
True.
Then we have the service objects. As I said, it contains ports. There are some predefined services that are already available, but you, of course, also have the possibility to change them or to add your own services there. AAA server for login to Wi-Fi, for example, or remote access VPN, where you can define your object, your profiles for connected to AD server or radio server. The Auth method, which is basically just grouping what you have done in your AAA server. I will also explain this in a later point of time. We have certificate objects that can be used for VPN or web server access for the internal web server, and of course the ISP accounts for your, for example, PPP connection to the service provider.
I think we missed schedule, but nevertheless, that can be
schedule
used.
is an important feature, and
exactly.
Also maybe for the Tech Talk special in 2 weeks.
Yes,
where we focus also on the schedule, what we can do with that to save some energy.
Absolutely. So very good. That's the set of objects I could select from. So I cannot define objects which are not, let's say, predefined. I cannot create a new object.
Exactly. So this is a list of all available objects. I also don't see any reason why you would need to create more object than this, because this is everything basically you can configure in our devices.
Perfect. And you will show us a bit later how to configure them. Very good.
Okay.
So how do I create an object? That's the question. And I think there are various ways of doing it.
Yep. We know 3 ways of creating objects, and we will start with the easiest one, the creation in advance. So you plan your network, or you plan a new configuration on your device, and you start thinking about, okay, do I need a new address object? Do I need a new user for that? And you then navigate to the object configuration menu and add it from there. I will now switch to the device. So as always, we have our ATP 200 demo device here, and let's have a look how we can create an object from the object menu. So we go to configuration, we go to object, and let's just visit the address and UIP object. As we can already see, we have here an overview of all available address objects in that device. You can sort them here by name or type if you want to just check out a specific type. There's no need for prioritization since objects are not prioritized. So you just assign them, and it's, I think, better to just sort them by name or type, depending on what you want to have.
Okay.
So let's go back to the creation. So we have an add button here where we can define our address object. So we can define a name like server 1.
Do I need to regard any special things? Can I use any character, or what is?
A good point. So special characters are limited to underscore, dash, and the point.
Okay, and there it's listed.
There it's listed. If you just hover over this exclamation mark, you will see what is allowed and what not. Also, white spaces are not allowed. It will immediately show red.
Okay.
And yeah.
Good.
In the address rule, so of course I will go into details later, but let's quickly check this menu here. I can define the address type, so I can add address objects that are host or range of IP addresses or subnet, FQDN for manual DNS entries. There are also some dynamic address types, but I will show them later, I think. Let's focus on how to add an object first. So I will define now my server object. And I click on OK. You can see it here.
Yeah, but then I can see when I look to the right, references is not referred yet. So
no,
it's
we
not
just have created the object, so
yes.
we have stored our information somewhere, and now let's quickly switch back to the presentation creation during setup.
Yeah,
because might
so
be that
I'm in the process of configuring it, and I find out, okay, I have forgotten an object.
Now it might happen that I want to create my firewall rule. I have created some objects, but something was missing. So of course, I'm currently in the setup phase. I cannot save it because some fields are not filled out yet. And of course, I don't want to then
start over again.
Right. So let's go back and let's continue with the firewall configuration. So we go to security, policy control, and let's assume we just want to create a new firewall rule. So I already see here my drop-down menus, and I can now also select my new created server object here. I can reference it for whatever reason. I want to allow client traffic just from specific clients to my server. I want to forbid the traffic, whatever. So now I am in my configuration, and it's like, oh, I forgot to create my object for the client.
Let's say
for the specific client I want to apply this policy to. In every configuration that consists of objects, I have the create new object button in the top bar. And from here, I also have a selection of all available objects that can be applied to this specific configuration. Here it's security policy. In the routing menu or in any other menu, I would have different selection. So this is already pre-filtered.
You only see the objects which make sense for this sub-bullet security configuration. Yeah.
So let's add our client object from here. I go to address again, and I see the same pop-up that I had
Same
before.
window that we saw before, yeah.
I name it client 1 just for test, and I define the IP address of this client. And I click on OK. Now I can see it here in my selection, client 1.
Perfect. So you don't even need to leave the configuration mask. You can just go from there and configure the object. Perfect.
Yes, exactly. So this was the second way, and we can quickly go to one other rule, like let's go to routing. So we can add a route. We start completely from scratch. We have not defined anything in advance. We can also create new objects from here.
Yeah, perfect. In every window, basically, it's listed. Yeah.
Yep. So third option, which makes sense for people or customers that want to import, let's say import a big bunch of address objects, for example. So we have the possibility over CLI, like web console, SSH, whatever, to create object with these commands. The commands can be found in the CLI guide, and I can also show you how to get them directly from the web GUI, and you can add these lines to the config file and apply them again, or also to a script file and execute the script once.
Okay. That is good if I, for example, have a new firewall and I would like to use the already existing configuration.
Right. So let's quickly go to the demo again, and let's have a look at one of our config files. We take the startup config, which is a current running config. You can download it from here. And if we open it, search for address checked. Yeah. We can see the list of it.
Can you enlarge it a bit?
Of course.
Thank you. Just
Thank
so
you.
that everybody can see it.
So we can see the list of available address objects, and we can also find our current objects. And
I could copy paste them into a
you
new
can
file.
copy paste it, just take care of the format. You can now have a list of whatever your device is capable of. In our case, it would be 500, so we could predefine already 500 address objects here.
Okay. So we can say in general, because of that question, the bigger the firewall, the more objects I can configure.
Yep. There's one question. I will explain this in the later point of time. It's about grouping objects in groups. And this is also something I will definitely show later.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Very
Mr.
good.
Mr. Meilert, we will definitely show that.
Thanks for the question anyway.
So of course, if you have then saved your config, give it a different name, and you can upload it from here again and apply it. The firewall will not reroute, and you will see if everything is correct with the file and you don't have any, I don't know, unallowed characters, whatever in it. It will also be shown in the object list.
And I see the shell script. I could also use a shell script for that?
Yes, you can also just store the same command that I just shown in a file. Use the file extension .sh, and you can upload it here and run it once from here.
Okay, perfect.
For one-time import jobs.
So all the possibilities there are for less advanced, more advanced, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I wanted to show how you can easily see the commands that need to be applied. So first, of course, you can check the config file and use this one. Or let's go to the object menu here. Here you have the button for CLI, and everything that you are doing now will be shown here as a command. You can just copy paste it. And if I now want to create something, like Google DNS server.
Maybe exists
we
already?
already have it.
Yeah.
Okay. When I do that, I can see it here. Yes.
Ah, this is a command. Yeah,
you can
perfect.
Just copy paste it and adapt it to your needs.
Yeah. Cool. Very transparent.
Yeah, these are the three methods how you can create objects, how you can see the commands, and how you can also work with that.
Yeah. So perfect. How do I see how often I have used an object?
You already asked this before. So it's a really, really nice feature that you don't lose your overview of where you have used your objects or how configurations are done to really track it back to the single object. So there's an overview in every menu where we have objects. We have the button for references. It will open a pop-up and will show where this object is from. In every object menu, there's also a column reference that shows how many times an object was used.
Okay. Can we see that maybe in the configuration itself?
Yes, of course. Let's switch to the device again. Let's start with an address object again. We have some public IP here stored, and we see that this public IP is referenced 2 times. We already see this in the column. We can, of course, already also sort for objects that are often used for whatever reasons. And we also see that some other things are already in use for some configuration. If we now click on reference, we see that this object is used in 2 address groups. We see that this used in 2 address groups. One is named Gruppe and one remote. We now go to this. We know that the device, that the address object is used here, and we can click. We can click here again, click on reference, and we see in which configuration this group is used.
Correct. And we also see that the other group is not used because there's no reference.
Yes, there's no reference,
Perfect.
right? So the object might be member of the group, so this is a reference, but the group is not referenced anywhere else.
Good.
And now we have a hyperlink here to the configuration. We see that this is priority 5. And we see this group is used here. I can easily hover with my mouse over it, and I can see how the object is used.
You can see the object content.
I can see the group here, the content, right? And this, I also have the complete hierarchy and see it down to the object. Perfect. So I see the groups and the object from here.
And the details even. Perfect.
Also here, if we, for example, go to one service object group where we can see which ports are contained in this default allow WAN to ZyWall, when we can see that some VPN services are included as well as HTTPS access.
Okay, super. So that's the references. I can just hover over, I see information, I can click on it, I go to the objects itself. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
So
now it's time to look into each individual object to understand what I can do with it and what configuration is needed.
Exactly. We will use the time and go through every object, and I will give some short explanation to every settings and also some use cases where this might make sense. And I will also explain the question that one customer has already raised, if objects can be grouped.
Correct. And if you have any questions why we are presenting, please feel free to ask them. That's why we are here. We want to have it as interactive as possible.
Right. Okay. So let's go back to our device and go to the object menu. We see our, I think, 13 object types here. And let's start with device insight. So device insight is something that was introduced, I think, last year with the firmware version 5. And this is a nice tool, if I click on Add here, to categorize your devices or pre-categorize your devices. And I will also show a good example why this makes sense. So let's just create one example object here. Like, for example, I want to do something with smartphones in general. Let's create an object from device insights with the name smartphones. And I can now define here the category and then also the operating system. So I have mobile phone, tablet, and I will just choose, for example, Android and macOS as the operating system for the smartphones, where I want to apply some rules to.
Yeah.
Okay. I click on OK. Now I have here my device insight profile object smartphones. And I can now make use of that in a security policy. I see here, it's not referenced anywhere yet. And if I now switch to the security policy and want to create some rule to deny smartphone traffic at all, I can reference it here. Let's quickly do that. I don't want to lock myself out, so I will just create an additional allow rule. So I have it here. And now I'm just allowing traffic for smartphones. It's not blocked anywhere. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a good example.
The only correction I would say, Mac OS is no operating system for a phone, but iOS. But anyway, this is just a detail.
Good point. Good point. So we again see here that what we have referenced and what we have configured in the object. And if we now switch back to device insight, we see that there's one reference.
It's used one time, yeah.
If we click on it, we see the firewall rule that we have just created.
Yeah.
What's also interesting and also a reason why this can be used, I will show this now. If we go to monitor network status device insight, we see a list of all detected devices that were connected to our firewall. And we see that this is my smartphone that was connected to the access point. And we see that this is correctly categorized. The operating system is correct. What we can also see is that the MAC address is different over time. Nowadays, the smartphones change their MAC addresses every time they reconnect to an AP.
Is it a security feature?
It's a security feature to avoid tracking. This makes it, of course, hard for us as an administrator to block specific MAC addresses, block specific parts of MAC addresses, such as vendor IDs. It's not possible anymore because we don't have control about that. With the device insight feature, this works again. So we can, of course, block Android phones or mobile phones in general.
Yeah, very good.
We also see here in this overview if there are some unallowed devices connected to the network, such as switches, APs that are not allowed, and we can all see that here.
Very good. So that works perfectly fine. Object for device insight.
Yeah, right. So that's it for device insight. Let's go to the next ones, zones. Zone is an object that groups interfaces, such as physical interfaces like LAN1 or GE1 in the bigger devices, or also virtual interfaces like the VLAN interfaces that I create. There are some default objects already here, and this is an example LAN1, where the current members are LAN1 and VLAN10. that has been created previously. And yeah, these are arranged in zones. Zones are used for firewall rules. So if we click on the reference here, we see that this LAN 1 zone is referenced in 5 security policies. Mainly, I think the standard policies like here, LAN 1 outgoing to allow the outgoing traffic, or LAN 1 to device to allow things like DNS traffic.
Yeah.
If we quickly go to the security policy, we can also see it here again. So this is the rule we just saw in the reference, and zone objects are configured in the from and to fields.
Makes sense, yeah. So it's very easy to click and maneuver from one side to the other and backward.
And of course, again, you can hover here to see the current members. It makes troubleshooting way easier.
Yeah,
if you want to,
very good.
Yeah, follow one configuration. And we have user and group objects, user and mainly user group objects. So we have 2 types of user objects, and this is local administrator. These are users that can access the device's GUI or via SSH, FTP, whatever. And then we have the normal users. And within the normal users, there are also specific user types, like limited admin. Limited admin is someone who just has read-only access to the device. A user is a normal user that, for example, is allowed to connect with a VPN or with a Wi-Fi or a captive portal. Then we have guest user that can also be defined separately. Ext user is an external one. And a very important one is the external group user. I will explain why this is so important when I will explain the AAA server implementation, because this often gets forgotten when people are creating their connection to the Active Directory server, but don't define which group should have access to the specific service they want to allow. Good. So this is done with the Ext group user object, where I can configure this again. The group identifier here in this case will be the Active Directory container address.
We'll come back to that when we look into the AAA server.
I will quickly explain that then. Users can be also referenced in security policies, for example. Let's quickly check where this user test is referenced. We see this is just that this user test is referenced in a user group, L2TP user. L2TP user is not referenced anywhere, but we have another group here that is referenced where test user is also referenced, and this is IPsec VPN configuration provision and our L2TP settings. And of course, this is hyperlinked. You can just click here and you can find your allowed user object list here.
Yeah,
these are all the users that are allowed to connect with L2TP VPN.
So the navigation is really easy.
Yeah, everything is interconnected, and it's very easy to just switch from menu to menu and follow the flow.
Good.
AP profile. So AP profile is something you will also see on our access points if you do a standalone configuration, and you need it on our security devices if you want to control or manage your access points from the controller, like we have it here already. So here you can define your radio profiles that are then in the end assigned to or referenced to AP groups and policies. This is just basic on default. Then we have here the SSID, where you can create SSID objects, and these contain your SSID information and configuration, such as a VLAN ID, the assigned security profile. And you can also see here that you can add an object here, a security profile. You can add it from here, or you can edit the current one from here. So it's again interlinked, and you don't need to close the pop-up menu. And
I think that's very important. If you are just going through a configuration, it's very important that this gives the needed flexibility.
Yeah, and those objects are linked in the wireless configuration, AP management, AP group, where you then in the end can assign your SSID profile. You can also create a new profile directly from here. And also your radio profiles are referenced here and can be created or edited from here.
Yep, perfect. Next is then in line the Mon profile.
We have the Mon profile. It's a feature that is not that much used, in my opinion. It's to create, let's say, a profile if you want to put one of your APs in monitor mode. That means the AP will scan the Wi-Fi that is nearby. It's a tool that can help you detect rogue access points, so unallowed access points that are connected to your network or are near to your environment. Maybe with the same, maybe distributing the same SSID like your company network, but being connected to complete different network in the end to capture traffic or to get people connected to that malicious access point.
So that would be then more visible for me, what's happening there.
Yes, so you can create profiles here with your needed channels that you want to scan and so on with your configuration, and you can assign this again in the end to your access point group. You can quickly show this. So this group, you can then, where access point are assigned to, you can set the AP to monitor mode.
Okay, there I can change it.
It's a feature that is not that much used.
So if I don't remember all the things that you have just said, is there any check? How can I see? What can I do in the Mon service already? Mon profile, is there any help?
Yep, there is. And this is just this question mark button here in the top bar. If you click on it, it will open the online handbook.
It directly jumps into that. Okay,
it directly jumps into the section where you're currently at. And there's always a short description about the feature. And here, as I said, monitor profile is used to track rogue APs in your network. And then there's also a description how this can be configured, what the menu points are, and how to make use of that.
And that's always updated to the latest firmware.
Yes, this is stored externally and not on the device.
Okay,
so
perfect.
This is always up to date. And for every menu point that you have in our devices, you will have also the web help available.
Great, thanks.
Zymesh profile, same. So I'm not sure if this is that much used. So it's it's for mesh setup of your APs. I think nowadays it's better to use Nebula with a smart mesh feature, where it's way easier to establish meshed networks. But this is, of course, still something that is possible. And in the end, you assign your Zymesh profile, which just contains of the SSID and the pre-shared key, where the APs should mesh with. This will be assigned to the AP group again. So again, here we should have the Zymesh profile. Yeah. If we assign one AP as a repeater AP, we will see the tier, and we can also edit again from here.
Very good. Talking about our most favorite address and GeoIP.
You're right. This is indeed the most important object type, because this is really used in most of the configuration. So it's used in net rules and with port forwarding. It's used in firewall rules. It's used in for VPN. So you need your addresses everywhere. So it's very important that you plan them accordingly, or add them or arrange them accordingly. And now I've just shown this menu earlier, so we will already switch to the address grouping, which is super helpful if you don't want to create multiple firewall rules for the same purpose, like you want to block traffic from client 1 and client 2. The rule would more be you want to block traffic from client 1 and 2, but just with one config. And with this, you can just arrange your address objects into groups. You can select them here and add them here, and this group can be referenced again in your firewall rules, routing rules, port forwarding rules, and so on.
Then you have the tab there, GeoIP.
Yes, GeoIP, but I will not show it from here. I will switch back to the address menu, because this is the menu where GeoIP needs to be created. Okay, bigger. So as I said, I will also explain the address types that we have here. And GeoIP is a nice feature. It's an external database that maps public IP addresses to countries, and countries are again mapped into regions. And with this, you can allow or block internet traffic or network traffic from or to specific countries.
Yeah, let's demo that.
Yep. So let's maybe use some Nordic countries like Sweden. We use the address type GeoIP or geography. We have here the list of the regions, and we take Sweden. Let's take also Norway. So we click geography again. We choose the region Norway, and now we can see I have 2 geo objects Norway. Those can be now directly assigned to a firewall rule, but again, that would cause, if I want to allow traffic from all the Nordics and block everything else, that I need to create 2 rules here at least. I know that there are more countries, so we can make it simple if we just create a new geography group. So we go to address group, we add a group, we select our 2 countries that we have already created. We can name the group Nordics, and we now have a address group that contains all public IP addresses of Sweden and Norway.
Yeah.
This can be now easily used for security policies. So if we now go to security policy,
for example, allow traffic from these
allow
countries.
Traffic, right.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course, the main purpose would be to rather block traffic from specific countries, but now I don't want to, let's say, offend anyone. Let's go for allowing traffic. So allow Nordics, and here we can just use the source and scroll down. We have our groups
here. Group there.
First, okay, maybe interesting fact. If you click on it, you first will see all the single objects, and if you scroll down, you will see the groups.
Group objects. Yes.
Yeah.
There is a comment on the Geo IP.
The comment was not relevant, but the second comment is relevant, and I will also show this now.
Yeah.
It's about the Geo IP database. Let's quickly go back to the setup.
And there is a question about the frequency of updating the Geo. Thanks for the question.
So let's go back to the menu. Now for this question, so how will the geolocation database be updated, and what if you find a mistake? So there's a possibility here to do a manual update, and you can also schedule updates like every 12 hours. So we know IP address distribution is dynamic, and it might move from one country to another, or things get reported. If you have some, let's say, known IP address where you really think that is wrong, then you can create your own objects and map them to a region. If you really find a mistake here, you cannot report it by yourself, but you can create a support ticket for that, and we will then get in contact with the external vendor.
Yes. What's our recommendation? Our recommendation definitely to keep auto updates on. It's then updated every Wednesday, 12 o'clock, for example, and then you're always up to date.
Yep.
So then we are answering that question there. And the question before was about GeoIP default grouping.
Yeah, it was about moving Russia from Europe to Asia in the region. So this is also something, Russia territorially belongs to both regions. So
true.
Of course, it's something that could be discussed, but
how can I see what countries are, for example, grouped in Europe?
I can just here check Europe, for example, get a region list.
And there you can see everything.
Yeah, you can see everything.
And okay.
I can also do it the other way around. So if I type in Russia here, I see that this belongs to region Europe.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So then we also answered that question.
There's one other question. Is it possible to see the list of IPs per country? And the answer is no.
No.
We cannot see it from here.
You could check individual IPs online,
you can check
to
it
which
by
country they belong.
By capturing the packets, for example. And you will also see it, of course, if you have enabled the logging for the firewall rule, you will see it in your event log from what IP this is coming.
I think the list of IP addresses would be just too much.
I can quickly show something regarding this, because we have some time left. Here you can also see in the log, under monitor log, from which country the traffic is coming. we can see that someone from China tried to access our device, and this is also then easy to track.
This is the Netherlands. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on.
Good. Yeah, services.
Yep, services, they contain mainly the TCP or UDP ports, or both, also some ICMP stuff, or if you want to define something by yourself, this is also possible with a specific protocol. We have some well-known ports already pre-configured. I think 100, okay, it's 107 that are already pre-configured. And of course, you can also create your own ports and services here. For example, if you want to create a NAT rule and you want to map an external port to one other internal port, for example, here we have created an additional object for our switch to access it over WAN.
Yeah,
443 was already in use for the ATP GUI, and we have now we used a free port 8443, and we are mapping this in our NAT rule to internally 443. I can quickly show this here again, that we have here one NAT rule. We can see here the IP addresses and here the ports, that we have also not specified the port from here, but have used our already created object.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's quickly go back, because there's also something interesting for service groups. Service groups are already groups of services, for example, for default configuration, like traffic that is allowed from WAN interface to your firewall. And some things that are always there are the VPN ports, so HA, AH, ESP, IKE, and NetT, which is used. We also now have added our switch port to here. I would not recommend to modify the default rule. There's a reason why it's called default. So if you have any, if you create your own rules and you have any problems, you can easily
create a new one and not the default one.
You can easily revert back to the default group,
yeah,
if you want to check any network issue. So it's harder to track what if you modify a default rule if you have any problems.
True, very true. Thanks.
So don't do that. Schedule, we have talked about this earlier. So schedule objects can be used in routes and firewalls, for example. And we have one-time schedules where you need to specify the date and the time. And we have recurring schedules, for example, changing routes overnight from main line to backup line or whatever, change route from a specific service, for example, data backup, that it is now using the more fast line when no other traffic is used, for example, disable Wi-Fi for the kids in the evening hours. So all these things are working.
After 10 o'clock, social media is blocked.
Right.
Good.
So here, yeah, you can define the weekday start time and stop time, and schedules can also be arranged in groups.
All right, that's super flexible then, yeah. Good. AAA server.
AAA server, important object in my opinion. Here you have 3 options. This is Active Directory, LDAP, which is basically the same, but not including the Microsoft specific things, and the radio server. Mainly used for authenticating against external databases like your own Active Directory, your own user database, whatever. Often used for VPN configuration, for remote access VPN, where you want to offer your employees the same username and password for all your company services, to allow access to Wi-Fi over a web authentication portal, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So if we click on Add here, this object really store a complete configuration set. You have also, instead of it's just not limited to the configuration, but you have also the option to test things. For example, if you have now created your connection to your AD server, you can also test it by typing in an example user here. Click on the test button. You will see a pop-up with a device with a result that it's working or not.
So I will not be surprised if it's not working. I can also check it here. If it's working, everything fine. Okay, I see.
Let's quickly save that. We can do the test here. It will probably show an error that there's no that the connection is denied. wrong IP or port. So I used some public DNS server here, and you shouldn't do that. Okay, so now I've created one additional AD object. I could do the same from the LDAP menu or the radius menu, where I can also then specify my parameters. And those are not used directly. They need to be arranged in Auth Methods. Auth Methods are objects that are assigned to things like HTTP VPN or captive portal wireless. So if we now add a new Auth method, we can find here over the add button the previous created new object from the category AD. We can edit it from here if we want. We see the same pop-up again. And we can also easily add this now or reference this one to one of our configurations. One good example is always HTTP, where you can directly here authentication method specify the authentication method.
Okay, that's straightforward.
Okay, we have two left. Certificates. Certificates are used to secure your device's web server, like we have it here. We have a domain TECHtalk.zyxel.eu, and we can see here that the browser says connection is secure. We can see the certificate here, and it's about also your reputation. So if you let guests, for example, log in via web authentication, they will use the web servers, the internal web server of the ATP. Of course, it wouldn't look good if there is a warning, hey, this page is insecure. So you can create here or import here, create or import your trusted certificates and use it in your web server. Those are in the end referenced here under system www, where you can then choose your certificate. Another option where this is used is SSL inspection under security services, where you can also then specify your certificate in your profile.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay. Third option for third usage for certificates is client authentication. If you use VPN to authenticate your clients automatically with a certificate, so without username, password, you can also import them here into trusted certificates, and it will allow your client to connect to your device.
Very good. And there's a maximum number or storage that I can use for that. For this
Probably, I'm not sure about the. You have a bar here, but this is more about storage and size, and not, I think, limited to amount. Yeah. But I'm not sure 100%.
Okay.
But I've never heard that someone has reached the limit here. But as I showed, in the end, you're limited to the web server, where you can only assign one certificate and two SSL inspection. The only limit that could happen is, in the end, the trusted certificate list, where you add your client certificates.
Good. So the last object group.
Yes, ISP accounts. So let's directly go in here. So a lot of customers need to use PPP or E to connect to their ISP. They get login data assigned, and they need to store this login data in an ISP account object. So you can define your parameters here, username, password, and the authentication type. Whatever parameter is also defined by your ISP. Maybe one side note here, we often get requests that the connection is not working for some reasons. Some ISPs are not supporting the service name. The service name is an additional parameter that gets sent during the PPP negotiation. And due to this, because there's something set, doesn't work. If you remove that, in most of the cases, this works.
So leave it blank for the moment and then see if it works.
Only fill it out if your ISP requires this.
Yeah. But then you have the information from your ISP and tells you what to put there. Yeah.
The ISP accounts or the PPP objects are referenced directly in the interface. So if we now go to Network Interface PPP and go to one of the default WAN1 PPP, for example, we can get the ISP account from here.
Yeah.
If we have missed to create one, we can do it from here again will show a pop-up and it will be directly visible in the drop-down menu.
Very good, as usual.
Yes, so this was the walkthrough through all the objects.
Yeah, perfect. So that is, did you show how to group objects?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So if you have any questions, then let us know. These are the number of various objects we have, object types, what information is stored in it. If you have questions, you can always look on the question mark on the top right in the configuration. Yeah, so then we have some, I think, more information about best practices.
Yep, some best practices. Some of them I've already shown during my demo.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just go through the list. So address and geo objects cannot be combined in the same groups. As this is a different address type, this cannot be grouped. So you need to group geo objects separately and your address object separately.
Correct. So next one is just to let you know that the geo IP feature is free of charge. It was in the previous, it was a licensed feature, but now it's free of charge and you can use it.
Yep. As already said, don't change default objects. The word default has a reason. It just simplifies the troubleshooting in the end. If something doesn't work as it should.
Yeah. And also, if you have shown the reference link in the quick navigation, is super easy to go forward and backward.
Everything is interconnected. You can easily track down your configuration to the object and from the object also to the configuration and so on, and easily navigate through the menus.
Good.
Yeah, renaming an object will update the name in the configuration, and I will also update all the references. Sounds standard, but yeah, it's nice that if you just rename something at any place in the menu or in the configuration, it will be immediately shown everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep, arrange multiple objects in groups to save time. As I said, if you want to create your own groups for GeoIP regions, or if you want to create allow lists for specific IP addresses or clients, do this in groups. You only need to reference the group in the end to the security policy and don't need to create multiple security policies for each device. Easy config migration by pasting object information into config files. Yep.
We did show that.
We have the config converter available, but it might be that you want to migrate from a smaller device to a bigger device and there's no one-to-one mapping available. You can just open a config file, go to your object that you also need in your new device, and you copy it or paste it to your new config file. You import it and you will see the list of objects in the configuration.
Thank you for this walkthrough for objects. If you have any questions, let us know. Now, I just want to hint again that the TECHtalk is always happening every last Wednesday of each month. So please be invited. The registration for October, November is already done, or it's already open. The October TECHtalk special will be available very, very soon. Next TECHtalk, official one, is happening on the 26th of October, talking about Nebula, and we are really showing how does it work in Nebula when we need to ease our configuration in the light of objects. Objects don't exist in Nebula, but we have it a bit differently implemented.
Yeah, we will show the ways of working, how things that I just shown are done in Nebula. It's a bit different, like working with tags and templates, and
definitely
we have multiple options there.
We invite you to the zyxel Green Networking event. That's definitely going to be very interesting. And if you have any questions related to that, let us know. Is there something that you would like to know about that? Then we can already prepare the question on our side. You did get another question?
Yes, customer is asking if it's possible to paste existing objects from the config file to Nebula. And this is definitely a limitation that is not working on our devices. You cannot one-to-one migrate from an on-premise device to Nebula. You need to do the configuration again.
Yeah.
So if you want to switch from on-premise to Nebula, you need to redo your configuration. In some cases, this even makes sense. So you get away from old stuff that is not used anymore. You have the chance to simplify your setup.
Yeah, true.
Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's a bit of additional work.
But once done in Nebula, you can always reuse it for other devices. Yeah. So just to mention that. Good. So we got a question, when is the next SSL VPN enhancement to be scheduled?
Yeah, interesting question. So we plan to launch our new ZLD 532 next month, and it contains some SSL VPN issue fixes and also increased stability and performance increase for our SSL VPN service.
I think we did get this question quite often, so we hope really that it does further improve our software. And as mentioned there, feedback to academy@zyxel.eu. Feedback, questions, whatever you would like to say, let us know. We are happy to listen to your voice. Good. And we never leave you alone. So we have our value-added services. There you can get a configuration voucher. You can buy it, and then we do the configuration together with you. It's more done in a education session than that we do it and you don't know what we did. No, we do it together. We show you, we explain you, so next time you can do it yourself. So if you have devices or services that you haven't configured so far and you're just afraid of doing that, don't be shy, just get in contact with us and we do it together.
Maybe it's also worth to mention that if you're part of our partner program, that you have the chance, or not the chance, that you have the possibility to get one configuration voucher for free each year. Depending on your partner level, the type might be different, but it's at least an idea to check out partner.zyxel.eu and check your partner benefits there.
Correct. Perfect. So you can follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. And on YouTube, for example, we are doing lots of unboxing videos, tips and tricks. So
yeah, we just have published some new videos about our Wi-Fi 6E access points. We have shown them in our last Tech Talk. So super interesting topic, 6 GHz networks, and it's available now also to buy.
Correct. If you want to know more about that, you can check it out. So Christoph, have you done everything we wanted to mention?
Everything is done. So if there's no other question from our customers,
I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much for joining, and have a very good day, and hope to see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See you in 2 weeks for our Tech Talk special.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're Zyxel, and we're your networking ally.